Okay, it's a little after 12 o'clock. Again, thank you for joining us today. Today is one of our monthly installments of Lunch and Learn from the Experts. Today we're going to be talking about SEO and content, a true love story. Some quick housekeeping items to start off. On the right side, for those of you who have not joined us before, you'll see the control panel. That is where you can do your chat. As well as during the course of this webinar, we're going to be giving away some takeaways, as well as having some polls and doing some quizzes. So be sure to follow along on the right side with anything that you need to address, and we'll be sure to address it as we go along. If you have a question as well, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll answer it either during the conversation or at the end of the program. Today's panel of experts, for those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Jennifer Greenjack. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Creative MMS. We also have 3 experts that work at Creative MMS, both in SEO and content. First, I'd like to introduce Dave Pereira. Dave.
Hi, my name is Dave Pereira. I'm the Digital Optimization Strategist right here at Creative MMS. And my love signs are marketing, SEO, data, and people.
There you go. Great. And Jen Crompton.
Hi, I'm Jen Crompton, and I've worked with companies of all shapes and sizes on their content marketing strategies and helping them really understand how to tell their stories and connect with their audiences. So thanks for joining today.
Great. And Lauren Devins.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Devins, and I'm the Digital Marketing and Social Media Coordinator at Creative MMS. This is definitely an important topic since brands have really not been able to interact with their audiences in person this past year. So really excited to dive in.
Great. Thank you. Some key takeaways for today. We're going to learn how SEO and content work together, obviously, how we can optimize content to help build those relationships, what are some best practices, and what should I do next? I know that we did get a couple of questions for surveys beforehand, and we'll address them either during or after the program. But before we get started, I wanted to start with a quick poll that I'll keep up for a moment, and you can answer as we continue talking. But we're really wondering, when it comes to SEO and content, which do you consider to be your biggest challenge? If you can just give us a one tick to let us know how you're doing, and then we'll know, where we're going to be able to focus most of our efforts during the course of today. With that being said, we're going to kick off with scene 1, and we're going to talk about how they met. And Dave, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. That was absolutely amazing. It was love at first sight. When you think about SEO and content, there's really nothing else out there that really creates that bridge that starts that conversation of engagement. And I think what we're going to see today, and you're going to learn today, is that when you marry SEO and content together, you're going to create that connection. You're going to be able to build a relationship that is ongoing, not just something for short term. We definitely want a long-term relationship. So that's definitely one way that we're going to start off with things. I want to let you know, when it comes to SEO, there is a psychology behind it. So if you think about it, SEO is the mind. It really goes into understanding your audience. And a lot of people might say, oh, we know who our audience is. We know, look, 2020 took us all by surprise. So the psychology behind SEO is extremely important, because with that, you have to think about what is important to people, not just your brand or your organization or what you have. Think about what it is they want. Think about the intent. Why do they query search engines for certain elements? So you really want to get to understand your target audience, understand their triggers, their pain points, also their rewards. So there is a lot that goes into it, the psychology of SEO, including, as you know, AI, artificial intelligence right now. Search engines are using it, and you might have heard of it. And the reality of it is these algorithms are programmed to emulate human thought, and more recently, emulate human behavior. You know what? You did this, so we know you're probably going to do this as well. So there is that psychology of SEO, and the art of SEO is taking all of that knowledge and knowing when to use it, how to use it, how many times are you going to use it. But with SEO being the mind, you also have to think of it like this. If SEO is the mind, then content is the voice. And you want to take all of that knowledge, you want to amplify that message, amplify the value that you've already gained from your knowledge of your audience, but how do you really actually get there? And that's what it really comes down to. So let me set the stage. Let's meet SEO, Mr. or Mrs. SEO. What we really want you to take away today when it comes to SEO is what is entailed in SEO to get the ball rolling, really to get the conversation rolling. And there's always going to be these SEO fundamentals. It's almost like a process. If you follow this process, you're going to do well. And every process and everything you do in life, it starts with a strategy. The DNA of SEO starts off with research. And you really want to understand exactly, look, you might have done some research on your audience maybe 1, 2, 3 years ago. After last year and moving forward in this digital world, you really have to keep up to date. You have to evolve with your audience. And doing the research is how you start off. You start off your SEO strategy with research. You do your keyword analysis, your competitor analysis. And you also want to look at what we were talking about before, the psychology. What is it that is going to make someone take an action? But before that action, you really got to create that conversation based off of what you have, not as much. You know you have services, you know you have products, but what are the intentions of your target audiences? And that's where the next portion of that process is identifying search intents. And that has everything to do with the psychology of SEO, right? You've done the research. You've dug deep in there. You've looked at industry trends. You've looked at your market. You know what is going up, what's going down. What are most people interested in? And then how are they searching for that? So when you identify your search intents, you'll understand why they matter so much, because you're literally starting the conversation because you're already in their head, and that brings us to the other part. When you've done your research, you've identified your search intents. Now it's time for optimization. And that is key. It's absolutely key that you don't start your content or anything else, or even optimizing, without research, without understanding the search intents that go, beyond words. And I say beyond words because optimization is not just about what's written on the site. It could be optimizing for your videos. And let's just face it, video is the number one, one of the number one factors when it comes to engagement. People will trust with that. But you want to engage through the video. You want to use infographics or images, because images truly still are worth 1,000 words, right? So you want to keep relevant and optimize white papers. There's so many things that you can do. And once you do that, you want to understand the user behavior. You want to understand, hey, listen, we put the research in. We understand the search intents, and we understand search intents can fluctuate, but we got to understand why they are querying the search engine for what we have. And when you do that, you want to understand whether or not you're understanding the behavior of users when they come and engage with your content or your site. And there are certain behavior signals that we're not going to get into right now, but let's just say not all things are created equal in data. A lot of people use Google Analytics, and you should, but you got to know exactly which elements of Google Analytics are going to give you the information you need. Because if you can get through this process, it's rinse and repeat. As long as you keep building on understanding your users, creating a conversation, and that's extremely important. So SEO is always searching for love. And I got to be honest, it feels good. One of the things that we want to do with SEO is we want to gain insight into engagement strategies, ranking signals. Remember, you're going to start off with that research. That's where you're getting the insights. And that's part of, by the way, that's part of the psychology is user insights. You need that. You want to learn how to use search query predictions. And that plays into search intent. Because if you've done it before, we've all done it. If you start to type something in and you see that box drop down, Google is saying, hey, you know what? We see that you're typing this. We see this is your intent. We also know there's other people out there that have been searching for these, and it's relevant to this. What are you going to do with that? Well, we're going to get into that, but you want to understand different search intents and incorporate that into content, because that's what's going to start the conversation. Don't always talk about your brand, your organization, your services, your products. Talk about the value. Talk about people. You want to create content that's optimized to keep that conversation going. And once you do that, you're going to be able to Look at what you've done. Take a step back. Look at the data. Understand the engagement metrics, and that is extremely important. But let me just tell you, with all of that knowledge and data, SEO cannot do this alone. There's something missing. And that kind of brings us down to, let's get to know each other a little bit more. In the next scene, I'm setting the stage. Let's meet content with Jen Crompton.
All right, so now we're talking about content. And just one quick thing that I want to add is, if you guys have any questions, please drop them over into the chat and we will make sure that we address them as we go. So if they pop in your head, feel free to drop them in, and we'll make sure that we will get to them at some point. Also, there will be a little quiz coming up, so make sure you guys are paying attention, all right? So when we're talking about content, the first part of this is the strategy. So when we talk about a content strategy, we're talking about how we're creating content and the why behind all of the content that we're creating. So I'm going to pause for a second and kind of go back to two things that we work with clients to really kind of understand is their personas, their audience personas, user personas, and that customer journey. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but understanding your personas essentially means you are creating those audiences that you are trying to speak to. So if you think about it in a relationship, you're kind of setting that profile for who am I interested in, or who's interested in me, right? And you're trying to understand how you can relate to them, how you can create those conversations, how you can meet them, how you can find out what they're looking for and be what they're looking for. So our audience segments, when we break them down, we're looking at their motivations, we're looking at their challenges, we're looking at what essentially they need. So that's one of the first things is, what does your audience need? And keep in mind too, as I said, in the customer journey, customers are going to travel a path, and the path is, as we know, it's not really linear, because they're going to be going a bunch of different places to get information to really make it to that decision-making part of the journey. So we start with awareness, we go into consideration, and then we go into that decision-making. So your customers are going to be, coming to your website or engaging with your content at different points throughout that journey. Therefore, their needs, their wants, all of those things may be changing. But the first question that you're asking is, what does my audience actually need? And I do this all the time with clients. I always say, okay, you know what you want to say as a business, but what do your customers want to hear? What do they need to hear? And what will influence them? So we're talking about needs, understanding their needs, also understanding what does your audience want? So what they need and what they want are two different things. So think about it from the standpoint of, what do they need? They need hard information, they need to know the services, but then what do they want? They want to know that you are credible and that you're trustworthy. So your content has to serve those purposes. Search intent. So David mentioned search intent, and I mention it here again because essentially this is what your customers are typing into their search, into the search bar to find you. So they are typing a question, they are typing a series of words, whatever it is, and that's the insights and the data that you need to understand. But whatever it is that they're typing, you want to show up when it matches, right? So you want to find the right match, and that's when their needs are being solved and they're being met by what you have to offer. The competitive analysis part of this, so, I don't love looking at the competition sometimes because it can take you off course and you can not be as focused on your individual mission. So your competitive analysis, though, is very important. You want to take a look and see what others are doing and see who else is out there, right? And what are their selling points, and figure out where there are those gaps and how you can fill those gaps. But what you want to make sure is that you still have your own guardrails. So, as a business, as a company, as the personality of your business, you can't go too far outside of those guardrails. But you can always take in the information from the competitors. You can understand how their websites work, which keywords they're ranking for, what content they're getting out there. Is the content educational? Is it informational? How valuable is it? And then you can find those white spaces and be able to fill those and to get into those opportunities. Another thing for the audience or for content composition before I move on to the next one is just thinking about what works and what doesn't work. And that means like what historically has worked for your business, what hasn't worked. And then again, you can take a look at the competitors. We can learn a lot from our past successes and from our past mistakes, and we can figure out how to build that strategy going forward. So before you get into your content strategy, your SEO strategy, before you start to marry those together, it's really about understanding the foundation, understanding what you need to know to create great content and what you need to know and what type of insights you need from the SEO side. So the next slide, it all depends on how much of a Friends fan you are, is whether or not you'll understand this. So it's Joey's good old quote of "How you doing?" Right? Did I do that okay? And essentially that is his pickup line. So your best pickup line, you need to have your best pickup line. You got to put your best foot forward. And that is to make a great impression, but also to start that conversation. So we always say content is creating a conversation. You want to speak with your customers. And if you are speaking with them and you're having a great conversation, that's how you're going to start to build that relationship. So I'm going to kick it back over to David to talk more about that relationship.
Thank you very much, Jen. And it really, really does come down to that. I know a lot of you have come here today because you want to understand about building that relationship. There's a lot of marketers out there, SEOs, content, strategists, social. But at the end of the day, are you really paying attention to that relationship? You really want to bring it back to looking at your audience, and you really want to say, hey, let's get to know each other. And that the reason why is you'll be better, it'll be easier to communicate. And I want to kind of take a step back now that we are on this slide. And before we kind of get deeper into this relationship, I want to, you're looking at SEO and content and marrying them together. But I want to have you look at your own life. Think about your own life and what you do. And I think that you'll see how life and the work that you do and your audience is all kind of intertwined together. But what I want you to do is think about when you really wanted to get to know someone, where you really wanted to date someone, or you wanted to marry someone. Every single last one of us did one thing and one thing only. We went to get to know them more. We kept trying to learn more about them, because the more you understood each other, the better you could communicate. And that's the same thing, because you build trust with that. And so I want to kind of have you look at life and also what you do when it comes to SEO and content is get to know your audience and then speak to your audience to build that relationship, to build that trust. Google does have that acronym, EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Now, trustworthiness is key. That's not by accident that Google follows that, tracks that, uses AI, because you have to build trust through SEO and content. And with that said, I think it's time to do a pop quiz. And I believe that'll be with Jennifer Greenjack.
That is true. All right. So everybody get in their chat box. Get ready for this. Get ready to win a $10 Amazon gift card, because today's Prime Day. And I'll make sure you get it before the end of the day so you can use it before Prime Day's over. Actually, it's Prime 2 days. I don't know why they call it Prime Day. All right. Here we go. Ready? True or false? SEO is for search engines. Content is for website visitors. Again, answer true or false in the chat box. And anybody that answers the correct will win the $10 gift certificate. We're not like doing a first kind of dibs things. We'll give you a couple of minutes because I know, well, not a couple of minutes. Let's say another 10 more seconds, because we don't want you cheating. No going to Google and figuring this out. We want you to be able to say it yourselves. So is it true or false that SEO is for search engines, content is for website visitors? I got some answers coming in right now. We got across the boards, trues and falses.
This is exciting. This is like nailed it. I love it.
It's like you got to wait for people to we're going to give you another 10 more seconds because I know there's more people out there. We haven't heard from everybody yet. It's a 50-50 shot at $10, people. And don't answer one true and one false, because that doesn't work. Can't answer twice.
Okay, I think is that
all right? I think we're at a good point. I agree. And for the final answer, it's false. Yes, it was a trick question. Hence the weasel. If you see, it's a pop goes the weasel. It's a partnership. Both are required for optimal website engagement. So while search engines search up what you're typing in, SEO is more of an engagement factor. than just search engines looking for a query. Both of those have to work together. And Dave?
And yeah, if I can just add to that, just to add context to what everyone is seeing right here. If you take away anything from today, take this away. Optimize for users. Do not optimize your content for search engines. You optimize for the user. Stay focused on your audience, because SEO, yes, it is search engine optimization, but what you're feeding that engine is data about your audience. So don't worry about Google. Make Google chase you. You don't chase Google. So that's really about what happens when you combine SEO and content. Optimize to engage your audience, and Google will follow.
Thanks, Dave. All right, thanks for participating in our little pop quiz. We're going to move into scene 5, which is all about tying the knot and, forming that relationship between the two. So I'll be passing it back to Jen.
So as we just kind of said, so SEO and content must be intertwined. So these are like, this is how you know that they're the one, is by following these check marks and making sure that you are hitting on all these points, right? This is how you know it's going to be successful. So SEO and content must be intertwined. And what we mean by that is that SEO should really inform content, and content should also work alongside SEO. So when David and I are working together and we're working with clients, David is doing, I like to think of him as more on the science side, because I wasn't very good at science, but I think that he's really looking at, like, what is this formula? What do we need? What are all the data points that we can put into content? And when we look at content, we're saying content needs to perform, and it needs to perform in different ways. So a lot of times when I'm looking at content, I'm putting it into 3 different buckets. It's content that is educational, content that is necessary, and content that is optimized. What you want to do is you want all of your content to be optimized, but sometimes there's content that you just need to create that doesn't necessarily have to be optimized, but it's content that, maybe something that you're using for sales enablement. And it doesn't really matter if someone is, you're not going to get someone searching for that and finding it, but it's content that you need to create that needs to speak to your particular audience. And it's something that you're going to distribute in a follow-up email or something like that. But you must always understand that there should be that partnership between them where they are working together, and they shouldn't be working against each other. Okay, that's like a good marriage, right? You're working together as a team, not against each other. When you answer your kids, you got to be on the same page, right? All right, and then having a conversation with your audience and telling those great stories. So every company has a great story. A lot of times they don't think they do, but it's part of our process is to figure out what that story is. And it's to tell that story. Think about when you're talking to your friends, your family, the best way to connect with them is by sharing a story, telling a story, talking about things that have happened. Essentially what you're doing is you're finding a way to relate to them and to put them in a position that they understand you, that they understand a situation. From a business perspective, they know what you do as a business and how you work and what you're going to deliver. So again, it goes right back to building that relationship. An example that I want to show you here is this is one of the websites. I was looking at the top 500 websites ranked by Moz just to kind of see what they had and which websites were ranking well. And I did find quite a few education websites, so higher education. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, this was one of them, and I thought this was interesting for Wisconsin University University of Wisconsin, and one of the things that they have, this is their homepage. Right at the bottom, it says, be a badger. And it gives you those 4 different options. And essentially what they're doing is they're breaking down their audience so that way they can appeal to whoever is coming to their website. So again, when you look at your business and you say, okay, I have 4 different audience segments that would be interested in coming to my website. And each one of them, they're typing in different things. They're looking for different topics and they need different type of information. So if you are a prospect, if you're a, a high school senior, whatever. I guess it's before that now. So if you're a junior and you would like to visit the college, then you're going to click on visit, or apply if you're looking for employment, jobs, whatever it may be. But they have separated that down into those different tabs so you can click on it and then you can go into actually getting information that's very relevant for you. And if you look at their website, I think they do a very great job in terms of telling their story and kind of giving you that campus feel without actually being on campus. The next one is that eatable content. We know it's edible, but we put it eatable here because we are creative. And it's that concept that David was talking about. So for Google, you need to have EAT, which is your expertise, your authoritativeness, and your trustworthiness. So your content should check all of those boxes. Your content should show that you're an expert within your industry. It should show that you know what you're talking about and that you are providing reliable, relevant information.
And just to add, if I could just add something to that, when it comes to that, keep in mind, there are different eatable pieces of content assets. So it's not just what's written there. Feed your audience something that builds that trust, and expertise, like case studies. Go a little bit further. Don't just have a case study. Go ahead and have a video. Have testimonials. Do whatever you can to nurture the relationship. And that's how search engines will be able to determine the level of EAT that they perceive you as. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, and David did mention another thing that we haven't talked much about, but is that content, understanding that there are different forms of content. And Lauren will talk in a few minutes a little bit more about other forms of content. But don't forget that when we say content, we're talking about all the types of content that you're creating. So from videos to website copy to downloadables, white papers, whatever it may be, all of that content, that's kind of what we're talking about in that, under that big umbrella. And as we said, content has all of the content that you create can have different reasons why you're creating it and how it should be performing. And I didn't mention this, but we do have a content audit sheet, I believe, right, Jennifer? So that's one of the files that we will be providing for you. And that is something that is essential for you to understand is, creating that or filling out that audit and understanding what content you have. So it's, the type of content that you have, the purpose that it's serving, how it's performing, and then kind of understanding how you can make that content better. If you haven't really factored SEO into your content strategy, maybe there's a few opportunities to do that right away. So when we're talking about that eatable content, WebMD, so I'm sure we've all visited and been like, am I dying? You're probably not, but you're trying to figure out medical information. So it is essential that a website like WebMD has really credible information and that they're providing information that has the right sources and that they are giving you, if they're giving you some sort of medical information, that they have disclosures and whatever else. So when you go to WebMD's homepage, it is full of content. And they're giving you, you see videos down the bottom. They're tapping into the top trends and topics that are going on right now. So they have the healthcare system, they have AI, they have the coronavirus. So all those things that are very important to their audiences right now, it's right on their homepage. They have a slew of content associated with each of those topics. It's actually funny too that the screenshot I took says, prove the impact of your content marketing efforts, right? So it's like a banner here, an ad. It's like they knew what I was doing. All right. And then the last one here that we have is really getting to know your audience and their goals. So as I said in the beginning, you always understand what it is that you want to get out there. When we talk to clients and we say, what do you do? How do you want people to feel about your business? They can answer all of those questions. And then when we say, well, what does your audience want from you? They can't always answer that question. Again, this is where those personas come in and really understanding your audience, but also always keep in mind that when you're creating any sort of content and you're like, okay, this is a new product that we have and we want to roll this out. Okay, great. But what does your audience want to know? They probably don't care that it's a new product if the features don't matter to them. Or, you know, that's what you really have to highlight is what are those features? How is it going to make their experience better? So getting to know your clients or your audience and their goals are really going to help you be more successful.
And if I can say one more thing about those goals, Jen, it's not, don't forget about your goals as a business as well. You know, that's why the psychology, the research goes into the SEO. And when you bring it together with content, you need goals as well. You can understand the goals of your audience, right? But you can't read minds. You just can't. So it's really also looking at your business internally and saying, where do we need to go? What is our objectives? What is our initiatives? And then look at, well, we understand their search intents. How can we not only meet those intents to bring them closer to whatever the goal is that they have? And you should be able to find that balance between your goals and your audience goals. If there's a disconnect, that's when you reach out to Creative MMS. But I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and this website, this is a good example of marrying those together, right? Because this is Marriott. They are essentially, they want you to book with them, right? And they know that you want an easy way to get away. So you want to go to their website, you want to type in where you're going, where you're looking to go, you want to put in your dates, and you want to see what's available, which hotels they have, and how much they cost, and all that fun stuff. However, you also may be a little bit concerned about traveling right now. So right here, they have travel with peace of mind. So that's very timely. They're telling you that, everything is okay. If something happens, you can get your money back. And then they have explore destinations. So that's another thing, is when people are booking so either you have a destination and you say, I want to go here and I am going to book everything around that. Or you say, I want to go somewhere, and then you have to figure out where you're going. So the other option is, exploring these destinations. And they've broken it down into the different types of travel that people would like to do. For instance, beach escapes. That's one of the hottest travel destinations right now are beach escapes within the US. So that's probably what they have here when you click through. And then family favorites. So you're looking to get away with your whole family, outdoor getaways. Anyway, the point is that they are able to speak to each of their audiences based off of audience behavior data, knowing what people are looking for, and then also being able to tap into some of those trends. So good website to take a look at, just to kind of understand how they start that conversation, but also how they're achieving their own business goals, as well as focusing on the goals of their audience. So then we get to the honeymoon. So this is the best part, right? I'm going to pass this back over. I think this goes to Lauren, right? All right.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Jen. So now that the relationship between SEO and content has been established, it's time to send them on the journey together with social media. If your content is properly optimized and it strategically uses search intents, as we've been talking about, then your prospects should be able to find it through organic search. However, you can't rely on organic search alone to get the word out. You've spent this time building this relationship between SEO and content, so you want to make sure that your content has the best chance of reaching your target audience. And one effective way to share the love is through social media marketing. So to give your SEO and content a successful honeymoon and have them live happily ever after and share it with your friends, there are several social media strategies that you can implement. So for one thing, you'll want to post your optimized content to relevant social media channels. So if your content is more business-centric, then posting to LinkedIn will give you your best results. But if your content is more community-centric and your audience is made up of consumers rather than business owners, then try posting your content to Facebook or Instagram, for example. It's not about getting the most views on your post, it's about getting the most relevant views on your post. So you want the people who are most likely to gain value from your content and take potential next steps with your business to see your content, and using the right channels is a great way to do that. You'll also want to post, posting your content also gives you a better chance to understand your audience. So you'll find out based on the level of engagement on your posts, what type of format that your audience wants to see the most. So try experimenting with infographics, videos, text posts, polls, and any other format that you can think of to gain insights into what engages your audience and use these insights to post more strategically in the future. And this will give your content writing team or marketers or whoever you have with you an idea of what topics your audience wants to read about and can help inform their content calendar moving forward. I would also recommend using hashtags when you post your new content to help broaden your reach. So adding some hashtags to your social media posts will help you reach people who aren't following your brand, but are interested in the topic that you're posting about. So I'd recommend using a combination of both high-level hashtags to target your industry, as well as more narrowed down hashtags to target more specific areas. Hashtags can be used on every major social media platform, but I wouldn't recommend using too many of them in one post because this can come off as spammy. But if you're not sure what hashtags to use, then you can try using right tag. On right tag, you can upload your caption and the image that you're planning to use, and generate hashtag ideas will be generated for you. Also, when posting, it's important to remember time and frequency. So you'll definitely be excited to share your new piece of content, but that doesn't mean that you should post multiple times a day for a week straight, because this counts as spam and will almost guarantee that people will unfollow you or at least be irritated with your brand, and that's not what you want. So use analytics on your social media platforms to find out what time of day your audience is most engaged and try and post your content then. But if you want to post it in increments, I'd recommend posting your new content when it comes out, then try again a week or two later, and then again a week or two later. So just give your audience a chance to see your content without congesting their timelines. Another recommendation is to consider creating social graphics to help boost your overall engagement. So brands are posting and creating new content every single day. So your followers, just give your followers a compelling reason to click on your post above all the other ones. You'll want to stand out on people's timelines, and one way of doing this is to create custom social graphics. So if you posted a new blog, you can consider, for example, taking a quote from that blog and turning it into an image. And don't worry, you don't need any Photoshop experience to do this. You can try using photo editing tools like Canva or Photor, just to name a few, and you can pick out a template, paste your quote or whatever you want to call out from your blog, and then share it to your social media profiles. But one thing to note is I would make sure that any photos or fonts that you use in your graphic are consistent with the overall branding on your website to give your audience a seamless experience. As we've talked about before with trust, this consistency across your brand's assets will help build trust with your audience and make your brand seem more professional overall. And then finally, I'd say never stop testing. Trial and error is a huge part of marketing, so try not to be discouraged if your content doesn't get the response that you were hoping for at first. Just try posting your content again at a different time. Maybe try updating the copy to see if this updated wording generates more engagement. Try different formats of posts, as I said earlier, different hashtags, and so on. You'll eventually get the formula right, and you can enjoy seeing improved website traffic as a result of your social media efforts.
And you definitely want to tie in SEO with social as well, because Lauren is absolutely right with never stop testing. Once you put a social campaign in motion and you use SEO, also make sure that you're not just nurturing with that optimized content on social platforms. The goal is really to drive them back to your value proposition, to drive them back to your site, to what you have to offer. So when you're testing, have a close relationship with social as well, to see exactly what's working, what's not. Did we use images? Did we use video? Did we say the right thing? Is it, so that is testing is always important. So not stealing your thunder, Lauren, that was amazing. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave. Okay, now back over to Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lauren. Appreciate it. All right. And of course, now that we've understood SEO and the marriage with content and promoting it through social media and other channels, you want to make sure that you're also putting it in a foundation for the future on your website. So you want to make sure that it's very easy for people to find and easy to navigate. 3 things to keep in mind is, yes, I've mentioned, put it so it's easy to find on your website. Make sure that You're not just helter-skelter throwing it everywhere, because it's just going to make things a little bit more confusing. You want to make sure also, if you can, to make sure that it's filterable, which makes it easy for people to find. So if you're going to filter it by like your services, or whether it's a blog or a case study or a white paper or something of that nature, or a video, you want to have that filterable by, maybe even by author, like who wrote it, depending upon how detailed you want to get. There's different ways to filter it so that if people really want to hone in on exactly what they need, it makes it really easy for them to find it. I'm sure you've gone to websites and you try to search something and it doesn't come up. Just makes it really frustrating. So keep that in mind. And lastly, I mentioned format as the third F. This is more for you. You want to put it in a place where it's easy to create this content on your website. You don't want to make it so that it's difficult for anybody to get in there and to post something, or to update something, or to maybe add a video to something that already exists. So keep those 3 F's in mind: filter, find, filter, and format. One way that we did that, if you pop onto our creative website at any time, creativemms.com, you'll see that we created something called Creative University. Creative University became our core resource or resource center platform. And it just made it really easy for individuals, if they were to go onto our website, to be able to find the information that they really need that's going to be beneficial to them. It's just one of the many examples that you can use. But again, creating that resource center or that resource hub is really going to make housing, or creating that foundation for all that content you're creating, in a location that's easy for people to access. Next steps, where do we go from here? All right, so we shared some tools as we were going throughout the process, whether it was what is a buyer persona, why do they matter, building personas. All that stuff is going to be shared with you as well via email after this is over, so just be aware of that, but we'll reshare the links in case you didn't get a chance to download them. Basically, make sure you understand your audience. Yes, you need to do keyword research. You'll need to do, finding out relevant keyword terms and search intents and everything that Dave and Jen went over, but you also got to understand your audience. So there's a couple of tools that we have for that right off the bat. Audit existing content. We did share a guide for auditing, as well as a spreadsheet to audit your existing content. Again, those will be shared with you later, but see what you currently have. Look at what's there already existing for you and find that low-hanging fruit, those quick wins that you can update or change or just republish to make it more relevant. Something you might even have content from, say, 2016 or 2017 that people are still looking at, but is it still relevant, and how can you make it better? So go back into that and check those both out as well. And then we do have an upcoming workshop, which I think Jen will talk about right now for us.
Yes, so we have our content planning session that we are hosting on Wednesday, July 14th at noon. And the way that we do that, so we do these with our clients all the time. And we also, if you can't make that date and you want to schedule something separately, please reach out, because we can always do that for small groups or individuals or companies, whatever you would like. But what we do is we come together and we take a look at all the content that you've had. We talk about your personas and your customer journeys, and then we plan content in a very strategic way. We're looking at different topics that will resonate with your audience and align with your business goals. And then we figure out how to make them appeal to your audience using search intent information and keywords and key terms, and then try to figure out, when it would make most sense to be posting it and what that distribution looks like. So it's really tying everything that we've talked about today together. And we use a spreadsheet because, everyone loves a good spreadsheet. And we pull all the information together, and it really can be a great way to guide all of your content, and a good way to kind of revisit and say, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And what do we expect to get out of all of these content efforts? So you can join us for that. Or like I said, if you can't make it on that day, you can absolutely schedule something with us separately.
Yes. And there is a way to register very easily. Again, it's in that right sidebar of your screen. If you do wish to register for it, just fill out the form. We do have limited spacing, so keep that in mind. If it is something that interests you, we can definitely do that as part of the process. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're going to kick it off now with some questions and answers. If anybody has any, feel free to put that in the chat. I see that there are some things coming through. We did get a pre-question as well. So this was a pre-webinar question, which came to us from Jacob. He asked, how is video indexing going to become more and more relevant And is there any recommendations on how to optimize varied content forms for SEO? So we'll probably kick that off with Dave.
Yeah, no problem. That's a really great question, to be honest with you. Let's just call a spade a spade. Video is already that important. It's already integrated. One of the things that you're going to see, a lot of people try to vie for that position of featured snippet, and you're going to notice that videos are making it to that video snippet. That's not by accident, right? Will it become important? It's already important. It's a good thing. You said Jacob asked it. It's a good thing that you're asking that question now, because there are so many changes going on with Google. But as you've heard me say before, video being the most engaging, you might ask yourself, all right, Dave, well, how do we optimize this? And I saw in the poll that we gave a little earlier that a lot of people are looking at putting, one of the biggest challenges is, putting SEO and content together. Think about that, Jacob, for your video. Think about what it is you're saying. Don't just say, you know what, we're going to do a video and we're going to do it like this. You want to make sure that you do understand what you're saying. Make sure that you look at your transcripts. Sometimes if I say, sometimes transcripts are auto-generated. I said auto-generated. And some video platforms might have heard auto-generation. You want to make sure that your transcripts are saying the exact terms that you're saying. Make sure, especially if you take that transcript and use it online on a blog post or a podcast page where you actually might have that video, then you put the transcript there. Guess who's going to take a look at it? Google, right? So you want to make sure that what you say in that video, go ahead and say search intents. Go ahead and say, I don't want everybody focused on keywords. Focus on keywords and how they enhance search intents or getting that insight of which intents to use. But hopefully I'm answering your question to say videos are the way to be, and go right here, right now. Keep focusing on that. Keep an idea of where you're posting those videos. And, especially listen to what Lauren, was saying, but also when optimizing your videos, pay attention to what you're saying. Look at your transcripts or your quote unquote closed captioning. When you're optimizing and adding to YouTube or Vimeo, in this case, let's just say YouTube, don't just drop a video there. Don't just drop a video on your site. Speak to it. Have a heading tab, have a headline, get people excited, write a description, add, more value. Get people excited about what's in that video, no matter what it is. Growing potatoes, get excited. You know what I mean? Get them, to look at your video as the most powerful content piece you have, because you care about them. And I hope I answered that for you.
Thanks, Dave. There was a second part to that question. I know you did a lot with the videos, but is there any recommendations on how to optimize other varied content, maybe like white papers or infographics or animation?
Yes, align with your team. Yeah, align with your team. Don't do this solo. Do not silo. Don't try to be a hero. The reality of it is touch base with your sales, touch base with your marketing team, touch base with a content strategist. You want to make sure everybody has a say, because once you've done your research and you're trying to convey a message, you're trying to keep that conversation going. Get insights from other people, because it's only going to help you make that connection that we were talking about earlier. It's only going to build trust, because you're getting input from other people on your team. Hey, you can even do a survey and put it out there and use that as insight. But the reality of it is align with your team or whoever you're working with, so that you can have a more robust ability to create white papers, to create infographics that are not boring, that everybody does. Do your research, have some stats, do the data, do the research, look at the research, kind of display the results, and make it fun. If I could say anything with this, the billionth of a second that what you're doing is not fun anymore, you're doing it wrong. Always have fun and look at different ways that you can optimize, on-site, off-site, with video, white paper, infographics, or any other content asset, including enhanced resource centers like our Creative University.
Great. And here's another question that just came in. How often should I be releasing new content to have an impact on my search rankings on my website?
So if I can answer this, and I'll let anyone else answer, don't be too worried about rankings. If you think, well, if I post this amount of content that our rankings are going to go up, no, it's not. And I think Lauren had mentioned that, and it's also the same with marketing in general. And Jen Crompton also mentioned, it's about quality. It's not about how much can we put out. It's about, are we being strategic? And that's what's going to help your ranking over time, right? Because you will, if you keep regurgitating or pushing out and pushing out and pushing out, are you really paying attention to your audience? Do you really want to help them? Because the reality of it is no, you're putting out fluff. So if I would say, have a content calendar, make sure that you stick to it. Don't worry if something comes up and you do something quick. Don't always push it out. Your rankings will increase when you pay attention to the search intent. You're using the right keyword terms. Your page is structured. If you're talking about your site, it's loading fast only because you have to engage as quickly as possible. When you marry SEO and content and then you add, social media as their love child, if you will, the fact of it is don't worry about the rankings. That is going to come with time, and making sure that you're optimizing content in a way that is engaging your users and not just engaging search engines.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, just to kind of emphasize that relevancy. So making sure that, your content needs to be relevant. It needs to serve a purpose, and you should understand what that goal is and that purpose is before you're publishing any sort of content. And when I take it back to like days when I just did like freelancing writing and I would do copywriting, and I would always ask whoever I was working with, I'd say, well, what is the strategy behind this? Who's your audience? Who are you targeting? When are they going to be looking at this information? What phase of the customer journey? And if they couldn't really answer it, then I would say, well, then what are the expectations for the performance of this content? Because I can only create content that's as good as the information and the insights that are fueling the content. So if you don't have that why behind it, then chances are it may not perform in the way that you would like it to.
And that goes back to Jacob's question about videos. Jen is right. Relevance, always stay relevant, and you can try different things, but when it comes to video or other content assets, stay relevant, stay the course, and you'll do well.
Great, thanks. I know you had mentioned at one point in time, Dave, in your answer, you spoke about keywords. Another question came out is, how often do I need to update my keyword terms?
Right. And that's something that we do a lot at Creative MMS is we track keyword terms. When you do the keyword analysis and you whittle it down to what are the keyword terms that build the best or the strongest search intents, it's not a matter of, oh, it's 3 months later, let's update our keyword terms. Oh, it's 6 months later, we're not performing well, we're not ranking, let's update our keyword terms. Focus on search intent. The reason why maybe your keyword terms might not be doing well is you're not creating content that's speaking to them, right? So if I were to say how long or, should we wait before updating or revisiting our keywords to see and evaluate, I would say 6 months to a year. I would focus more on the content that you're, kind of creating. We at Creative MMS, we track our keyword performance. We look to see which keywords are performing well, which ones are not performing well. Do we have keyword cannibalization because we're not being relevant, we're not being specific? So the kind of the date range of updating your keyword, your keyword research or keyword analysis, we have a client, without naming names, we have a client whose keyword terms were not working for them at all. But what it came down to is it's only because we just weren't speaking to it. And we didn't have to revisit the keyword, keywords that we found. It was that now that we have these keywords, don't bite off more than you can chew. Select the services that you have and focus on which one target keyword term per page per service, and then keyword variations. If you do anything, don't revisit too much. Go ahead and say, hey, we found these keyword terms. Go ahead have the keyword variations. Look to see which ones are performing well week over week, month over month. If you want, go ahead and revisit your keyword research, keyword analysis. Do it again. But I don't think your audience is going to have changed that much. So really it comes to you understanding the personas, understanding the journey that you're creating, and using optimized content to nurture that. You will see your keyword terms or your keyword rankings increase. Why? Because you stopped paying attention to keywords and you started paying attention to the keyword within the search intents that answered or rewarded a search query. So I would not recommend updating anything less than 6 months. SEO takes time. So everybody on the call, just keep in mind, like we put a campaign in place. SEO still needs time to gain traction. So like I said before, stay the course. Don't be changing up things because it might just be a matter of, kind of enhancing your content and then distributing it in a better way. And I hope I answered that.
Sounds like you did, Dave. We have one last question that I'm reading here. Is what works better, long form content or short form content? And there was a second part to it, but it seems to be missing. So let's start with that question first. Oh, and how many words should it be to make an impact? I guess was the second part of that question.
So, so I'll just answer in terms of long form and short form. And the answer is, that both types of content have their place and time. So as I said, it makes sense to vary content, and it really just depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to have someone engage with content and it's very valuable and it's at a pivotal point in the customer journey where they need more information, then more is better. Sometimes less is better, and they just need some quick information that, talks about an announcement or something like that. Then that content may be better as a short form type of content. So really, again, you're looking at like, what is the goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And then where does this land within the customer journey for that particular audience? And then you can kind of decide, if it needs to be long form content or short form content. And then when it comes to different lengths, I'll let David kind of answer that question. So maybe we'll just take the example of, like, say it's a blog post and we're looking at, what should the minimum be for a blog post that can really, have an impact? So David, you can answer that.
Right. So just for everyone's general knowledge, you most likely will rank better with long form content. Jen is correct. It really depends. It's a time and place, but you will rank better with long form content. You can do short form if you would like, because look, there might be an update or a holiday. You want to celebrate a team member's anniversary at work. You're not going to write a long form on that, right? But what it comes down to it is in blog post, I would try to stay more with long form. If you are doing short form, try not to go below 300 words at all. The long form, try to go up to 900 words to 1,000. You will be safe if you do 1,200 words. It sounds like it's a difficult challenge. It's not. It's really, once you've done your research and of course you identified your search intents, then you'll be able to optimize. See where I'm going with this? I just brought it all the way back 360. Just had to do that. But if it's short form, make sure it's at 300 to 500 words. Long form, make sure it's 900 to 1,000, 1,200 if you would like, but try not to be too concerned with the long form. You will rank higher for long form content as opposed to short, but it really depends on what it is that you're trying to, the conversation you're trying to have. Just make sure that it's optimized.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that, which David kind of mentioned about the optimization, is the structure. So making sure that, if you're writing a blog post, that the H1s, the H2s, so that all comes into like the anatomy of a great blog post and where you're going to place certain keywords and phrases. So, length, while that's important, you have to determine if it's short or long. You also want to make sure that the structure is there and that you're building the blog post in the best possible way that it can perform.
And that will build the best love story you'll ever see. Any more questions?
Looks like.
I think that's our last one. I want to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. We're good.
Okay, great. No, I think we're good. I think we got through all of them. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Again, we will be following up with this afterwards. We'll send you a recording of this, as well as links to all the assets that we were providing throughout. If you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to reach out to us. And in addition, we'll be sending a link to our content workshop. So if you are interested in signing up for that for July 14th, we'll be happy to host that after as a continuation of this. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and take care. Stay well, everybody.